Next on Arizona 360, reinforcing support for Border Patrol agents feeling the stress of the job.
What we've got to do is make sure that we can convey to them that there is hope.
The ongoing debate over the fate of one Tucson landmark.
My message is we can play chicken if we want. I'm not going to blink.
I am not going to be the person that pulls a demo permit and takes that building down.
Plus, one woman gives her husband the gift of life.
I'm an option, I'm here. Let's just take care of and go through this together.
Now they're spreading the word about the need for living kidney donors in Arizona. Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Vanessa Barchfield, filling in for Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us. Border Patrol and customs officials say they're understaffed and overworked, and it's having an effect on morale. The agency claims nearly 800 officials were assaulted last year, an increase of more than 70% from 2016. That's despite the news that apprehensions overall dropped to their lowest level since the early 1970s. Homeland Security says the uptick in violence against its agents is directly tied to cartel activity and drug and human smuggling. Nancy Montoya reports on the Border Patrol Tucson sector's approach to helping its agents cope.
I'm choosing my words carefully. Our officers are at a breaking point.
Anthony Reardon is the president of one of the unions that represents customs and border protection officers. He warned Congress that chronic overtime hours and low morale are a deadly combination for all CBP employees.
There has been a dramatic increase in the number of suicides among CBP officers. There has been, I've heard from the agency, a dramatic increase in the number of substance abuse cases, a dramatic increase in the number of domestic violence cases.
In the field, agents must always be prepared for the worst.
They were checking an area known for smuggling activity, and they came upon 4 subjects that were found deceased, lying underneath another tree together.
My experience is Border Patrol agents are one of the most stressful jobs in our society.
So you just got one right now, Phil? And that one's late?
My name is Kevin Gilmartin. I'm a police psychologist.
Gilmartin retired from the Pima County Sheriff's Department after 20 years working with officers in crisis. He now travels the country helping law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and DEA, deal with stress and mental health issues. He says Border Patrol agents are impacted by all the stresses other law enforcement officers face, but have the added issue of isolation and vilification.
Border Patrol agents can be from New York, from California, from Montana. Then they're sent to the border. They walk into an environment that is pretty hostile. They don't have a constituency, for the most part, in the communities that they work in. So they lose all the resiliency factors of extended family, the resiliency factors of a community that they've been woven into. So their only identity in those communities is as a Border Patrol agent. And in those communities along the border, La Migra is not held in high esteem. And as that happens over the course of years, then we have profound depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and we do get the escalating rates of suicide in our officers.
While Border Patrol will not give out exact numbers, according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, every year more law enforcement officers, including Border Patrol agents, die by suicide than are killed in the line of duty. The rate, says the association, is 2.5 times that of the general public. Now, in the past, Border Patrol management has avoided talking about mental health issues, including suicide. But the new Tucson sector chief, Rudolfo Karish, says he is determined to change the culture.
Any suicide, first of all, is too many.
Now, before coming to Tucson to head up the Tucson sector, Karish took leave from a Texas sector to help put together a national resiliency task force. Karish was key to forcing a national conversation about the issue that impacts all 20,000 Border Patrol agents across the country.
Key to that, of course, was communication, Because remember, as I previously indicated, we didn't do a good job of talking about it. We also had to remove the stigma of reaching out for help. We always in law enforcement viewed that as maybe a sign of weakness, but that's not a sign of weakness. That's actually a sign of strength, of reaching out for help. So what we need to do is start communicating that to our employees, is to let them know that there is someone that they can reach out for help, and there is no stigma behind that.
Ready to go, buddy? Let's do it. Let's do it.
So the Border Patrol Tucson sector increased its peer support program and chaplain program.
My name is Agent Nick Robbs. I am a Border Patrol agent here in Tucson sector. I've been an agent since 2011. I've been a chaplain for the last few years.
The Tucson sector now has 24 chaplains like Robbs and 120 active peer support trained members. Agent Robbs started in peer support.
As a peer support member, I was able to talk to other agents on a peer level about stresses that they might be going through, stressors on the job, family life, financial stressors, whatever the case may be. You're going to have those ups and downs, right? We understand you're not the only one. That's the thing, is you're part of this community. And then after that, I became an official chaplain for the Border Patrol, and I was able to guide them through the issues that they might be dealing with. We can address the spiritual side of the house.
Oftentimes, if you're feeling that stress and anxiety, if you're having substance abuse, if you're having problems at home and stuff, they all lead to it, including the finances. So we need to continue to look at everything that we can provide for our employees to make sure that they can cope with the stressors of daily life, that they can find someone to turn to for help if they're getting in financial difficulties. And that's why we have a lot of these special programs now, is to help the employees understand is that there is hope, that they can reach out to someone.
But you know, a lot of agents, I would imagine, are saying to themselves, yeah, this is really good that they're trying to help us, but I don't trust them. What if I say something or do something or ask for help that is going to result in me losing my job? What do you say to the agent about that?
Well, I will tell them, first of all, with the Employee Assistance Program, which we refer to as EAP, completely confidential. I mean, you have licensed professionals who can help you, whether it's getting counseling in person, by phone, mobile app, or actually sitting down and talking to somebody. Management doesn't get a report back based on what those conversations are.
If you were feeling stressed out, would you, as the guy at the top, would you take your own advice?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I? At the end of the day, it's the pain to our families of what we leave behind when we don't take that opportunities to reach out. I think for most people who do commit suicide, it's the loss of hope. What we've got to do is make sure that we can convey to them that there is hope, regardless of who you turn to. If it's somebody in the organization or outside of the organization, there is someone who can help you regardless of the problems that you're facing.
Rudolfo Karish says that is the message he is conveying to all 3,700 agents in his command in the Tucson sector.
Central Tucson could look drastically different in the years to come should developers get the okay to move forward with several projects. One of the latest proposals concerns the future of the St. Benedictine Monastery in the Miramonte neighborhood. During a recent community meeting, the developer and architect revealed plans to build luxury apartments around the monastery. The buildings would stand 7 stories high. Neighbors are pushing back. Tucson City Councilman Steve Kozachik oversees the ward where this project and many others are located. We asked him what the council considers when reviewing these proposals.
When a project comes along, each one rises and falls on its own merits. And so we look at the project, we look at the proposal, we look at the architectural elements, we look at what, how tall it is, the massing and all of that. And then you overlay that next to what's around it. Is it, in the case of the Benedictine, is it next to single-family residential areas? We're going to move forward with this project, but I have to tell you, Vanessa, that when we saw the proposal at the public meeting that we held last week, it was jarring. It is 7 stories that dwarfs the existing chapel. It's next to single-family residences. It is completely contextually inappropriate given what's surrounding it and the height and the massing in the chapel itself. Ross says that he's going to build 7 stories. My message is we can play chicken if we want. I'm not going to blink. I will take the position and have told him that I believe that what is being proposed is contextually inappropriate. And there was an audible gasp in the audience when he put up on the screen the proposal.
And of course, it's not just the Benedictine Monastery. There are a number of other high-density projects in your ward, in particular, projects and proposals. Can you highlight any that you're excited about or that you're behind? And then, on the other hand, some others that are maybe more concerning to you.
We have about 5 projects right now in Ward 6, each with their own dynamics. We have a proposed 20-story project at Campbell and Speedway. That has gone through a significant public participation. And frankly, that from an architectural standpoint matches what the area, it's not immediately adjacent to residential areas, it's buffered by the hospital and by commercial. That is in a completely different situation than what the Benedictine is, which immediately is adjacent to residential. We have a student housing proposal at Speedway and Euclid, again, immediately adjacent to residential areas. It's 7 stories. I've spoken to President Robbins about these student housing projects that are going on the outskirts of campus. And my suggestion and proposal to him was, why don't we bring these projects back within the campus footprint? There's plenty of surface parking. There are some old dorms that are 2 and 3 stories over west of the football stadium. Knock some of those down, go vertical within the campus footprint. Then you don't have this rub out in the community like what's happening at Speedway and Euclid. That's another one that I think has challenges. On 4th Avenue, there are a couple. One is using the infill incentive district, and my concern about that is, again, it's student housing across the street from the district. When we put the IID, the infill incentive district, together, we specifically said in the location they're building, we don't want student housing, and so it's prohibited. The way they're getting around that, though, is they're proposing to rent by the room instead of by the bed. So they're kind of threading the needle, saying that it's student housing, but it's really not because of the way we're leasing it. Again, maybe completely compliant with the letter of the IID, but certainly not the spirit. And there's another one on 4th Avenue that is market rate apartments that is going to be about 150 feet tall, but that's stepped back from 4th Avenue and it's completely consistent with what we proposed when we put the IID together. So as I said earlier, each one of these projects is site-specific, context-dependent on what's around it, what's being proposed, what's the underlying zoning, what does that allow, versus what they're asking for through a rezoning process.
How many of you are here because the existing structure, the monastery, the chapel that we're sitting in tonight, is the most preserving it is the most important thing to you? Okay. Most of you. All of you.
There's a compromise to be had.
Another question.
He said at the meeting, if I'm the builder, it's going to be 7 stories, then maybe you're not the builder, man. You know, at that point, then maybe we pivot and you sell it to somebody who will build something that fits the context of the area and fits what the community's after.
How endangered is the monastery at this point, would you say?
Well, I think that it's a canard for him to throw out on the table, saying that if it's not me, some student housing development company is going to come in here from Atlanta or Topeka and knock the thing down. This community would rise up, and I would be with them arm in arm, saying you're not going to knock that building down. It is an historical architectural icon in this community. It's not going to be bulldozed and to put in student housing. It's simply not going to happen.
And how much of a say does the community, do neighbors have in determining the fate of these projects?
Well, so he is asking for a rezoning. If he goes through the rezoning process, there is a significant public involvement. That doesn't mean he has to agree with everything the public is asking for. But there will be a zoning examiner hearing, a formal neighborhood meeting. The one I held last week was not the formal neighborhood meeting. And there will be a public hearing in front of the mayor and council. So there are 3 bites at the apple for the community in terms of changing the design, downscaling the height and the massing. At the end of the day, the mayor and the council have the final vote on whether or not to approve what's being proposed. If it's a rezoning, that's the process. If he simply says, I bought this understanding what I was allowed to do on the property, student housing, 4 stories, and I can demolish the monastery, he can go forward with that without asking anybody anything. So the answer to your question is how much public involvement is there depends on what path he chooses. And I think he has heard pretty loudly and clearly from the community, if nothing else from the audible gasp that happened when he put the massing diagram up on the screen. They don't like what he's proposing. They do want to preserve the monastery, and they do want something that fits contextually in the area. And that's I hope where we wind up on this.
With so much uncertainty surrounding the monastery, we asked the developer, Ross Rolney, if there's any room for compromise and how he plans to respond to concerns raised by the neighborhood.
So the property, regardless of my involvement or not, will be fully developed. Every square inch of that property, even if I had never gotten involved, is going to be developed. My vision is housing, multifamily housing. Because of the economics, the purchase price, the existing entitlements, it will end up being some kind of a multifamily product. For me, it would be a high-end luxury for rent community.
People are very concerned about the monastery and its continued survival. I think they're also very concerned about the height of the proposed buildings being out of scale with the rest of the neighborhood.
Now, neighbors have different ideas for how they'd like the property developed. Is there any room for compromise between their vision and yours?
There is a ton of room for compromise. And I feel like I've gone to the table with some significant compromises. So when we started this process and meeting with smaller groups of the neighborhood, and it was strongly suggested, and that's my best way to put it very mildly, do not attempt to bring student housing into our neighborhood, and do not consider demolishing that property. Those were the two most significant concerns, deal starter concerns. Well, those were taken off the table immediately. If I am going to develop that property, the monastery will be preserved through a landmark designation in perpetuity. If that's not proof of putting your best foot forward, I don't know. But I took it further. I hired Corky Poster, his firm, the lead, arguably, as a preservationist architect.
We've been watching this building now for about 2.5 years. We are historic preservation architects, and if you're in that business, you're watching this building wanting to see how you might be involved in the process. We're working with the foundation.
He wouldn't be involved in this project if he too wasn't excited by the possibilities. I think that bringing him in not only was a showing or an example to the community that I want to do the right thing, but also bringing him in really shows that we should be able to make this work. Now, many people are making comments, you know, and you can see how much needs to be made off of this project. Developer greed, we've seen that all over the place. They don't understand the risk involved in a project like this. It's significant.
And is there a case to be made that the property's value is really in the monastery itself, and building these sort of high-density developments around it could actually, you know, diminish its worth?
Well, the value of the property from an economic point of view is in the vacant land. There's an argument that the existing monastery does not have much economic value. What do you do with the chapel? It's beautiful, but it's almost the albatross of the development, because, you know, as you travel in different communities, there are old chapels being used as a bookstore, because what do you do with it? So I believe the economic value today is in the future development of the project, as do most of the other interested parties.
How endangered would you say the monastery is right now?
I don't think that it truly is. With me as the developer, not at all. I am not going to
be the person that pulls a demo permit and takes that building down. That's easy for me to say. Now, I very badly want to develop this project. I'm excited about it. And I've decided that if I am unsuccessful as the developer, it's going to be because at the end of the day, I didn't get the support, I didn't get the votes from mayor and council. That's it. I'm going to go all the way, I'm going to try, I'm not going to quit. At that time, if I can't develop that product, the product that the architects and the planners and myself have been working on, then I will back away, the property will be sold to the next guy. Now what he does with the property, I don't know. I hope that they will preserve it as I am offering to do so, but I can't control the next person or their intentions.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Good girl.
Every 10 minutes, another person gets added to the national waiting list for organ transplants. That's according to Donate Life America. More than 116,000 people are on that waiting list. In honor of National Donate Life Month, we took a closer look at how the issue is affecting Southern Arizonans, specifically those awaiting kidney transplants. We got that insight from transplant surgeon Dr. Tanji of the University of Arizona College of Medicine, and Jennifer and Dan Vandevort, a couple with first-hand experience.
I was originally diagnosed with a condition called thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, or TTP, back in 2003, and it actually resulted in the loss of my kidneys and also a stroke. Not as big and vicious either.
Dan spent several months on dialysis. Then his mother offered to donate one of her kidneys. They were a match and underwent surgery in Phoenix. It was a success until Dan's blood pressure started to increase.
That kind of caused problems with that transplant, so my renal function went down gradually over the next 14 years. And eventually I got to the point where I was going to need it either to go back on dialysis or another transplant. And that's basically when Jennifer decided that she wanted to check the program for being a living donor. And she actually matched out very well too. And eventually we did that transplant as well, and everything's going very well so far.
And when was that transplant?
That was last August.
And they're just darling. I mean, not as good as ours, of course, but.
Jennifer, when you started considering donating your kidney, what was going through your mind?
Wow. First off, I wasn't even sure if it was going to be an option. You know, were we a match? I had no idea what the process was. I'm like, well, I know my blood type is A negative. I'm like, hey, honey, what's your blood type? He says, well, it's A positive. I'm like, oh, I don't know if positive and negative makes a difference. Apparently it doesn't.
I swear I never asked what her blood type was when we were dating. It just happened to match up.
Just happened to match up. So then, you know, Dan got through the process to actually be listed, and that's when I was able to start my process just to see, am I an option?
Dr. G, Jennifer, of course, mentioned blood type. What are some factors that are taken into consideration when making a match?
Well, many things. You know, first of all, blood type is important. I mean, blood type had to be compatible for a successful transplant, but it's not necessary. There are programs that attempt to do an AB1 compatible transplant, but with some risk. The other thing is the antibody in the recipient. There would be a situation that the antibody in the recipient was against the potential donor, and in that case, the rejection is a risk. So there are many things. The other thing is a family history, genetic defects. Some kidney problem can occur in the family. Sometimes we do discourage a family member to donate. Diabetes, hypertension, that tend to run in the family too, so many things. So suffice to say, typically I would tell the potential recipient or the donor that led us to make the decision for you.
And how many people are on the transplant list in Southern Arizona? And are most donors coming from people that are, you know, in the family or friends or people that are known?
So, you know, obviously in our program, I think we have about slightly less than 100 people currently active on our kidney transplant list, but that list is dynamic, can increase and decrease, depends on our transplant activity. In terms of living donor, in southern Arizona had not been a predominant mode of the transplant here compared to, say, Phoenix. However, look around the country, we also observe a trend that the living donor rate had been decreased in the last 10 years. That is very difficult to understand. There's a theory about economy, there's a theory about healthcare reformations, and suffice to say, the public awareness is very important. I mean, people have to be aware of there's such an option as a living donor, just like what Jennifer has said. You know, if you never thought about it, you would never even attempt it.
Dan and Jennifer, how did the surgery go for both of you, and how are you feeling today?
It went very well, very well. Yeah, I think we recovered for maybe 2 weeks afterwards. You know, kind of slow, but it all came back pretty fast.
Yeah, it is major surgery. You know, there are things to consider because it is, you know, they're removing an organ. I have heard that it's more difficult or challenging for the living donor to recover. I didn't experience that. I bounced back. The one thing I would really recommend to people seeking or thinking about this is really just get your eating spot on. Get yourself in the most healthy that you can possibly be. Don't let that be a limitation, but make that a focus before you go in there, because the more healthy you are, the easier your recovery is. Have your network together. Have your family, your friends around you, because the more love that you have around you, the more support you have just around you, even on the periphery. That will help you with your process, with your journey, with your recovery.
Dr. G, is there anything that you want people to know that are maybe considering donating an organ?
So first of all, there's a lot of helps for potential donors. I mean, any transplant center, they would have a mentoring program, you know, would have someone like former donor like Jennifer to guide them through the process and listen to some of the experience. And around the nation, the UNOS had a website called the Transplant Life, can also help. And then the National Kidney Foundation Arizona chapter also provides some assistance as well.
And Dan, what was your reaction to hearing that Jennifer was interested in donating her kidney to you?
Well, I was really very humbled, and I wasn't even expecting it. You know, even though she's my wife, I don't think she should necessarily need to give me a kidney, but it's very, very humbling.
Good girl. Thank you. He was encouraging, but didn't want me to have to go through it. Didn't want to have to watch his wife go through the potential negatives or go through the pain of actually it is a major organ donation, it's a major surgery. He didn't want to have me go through that for him. And I said, well, you know, I'm an option, I'm here. Let's just take care of and go through this together.
Well, thank you so much to you all for coming in.
Thank you.
That's all for this week. If you have any feedback, email us at arizona360@azpm.org. Thank you for joining us. Lorraine Rivera will be back next week.